Hello everyone and welcome back. Today, or as a matter of fact, probably yesterday now for you lot, we received the species field guide for none other than the Quetzalcoatlus. Now, being myself, I absolutely love the Quetzalcoatlus to bits, so once I saw the field guide, it definitely had me thinking, well, what could this potentially mean for the future of pterosaurs in Jurassic World Evolution 2? And since you lot loved the aquatic expansion DLC video last week, I thought it'd be good time as ever to talk about a potential pterosaur DLC in Jurassic World Evolution 2. And that is precisely what I'll be looking at today, so if you do go on to enjoy today's video, please do consider liking and subscribing, as your support does mean an awful lot to me. But with that being said, let's get into the video. Having watched how Jurassic World Evolution 2 has already changed, something I've realised that Frontier are paying a lot of attention to is actually the pterosaurs. And I know they're not perfect, they can't complete simple tasks like walking and they're buggy at times, but I feel like they've got much more detail as opposed to aquatics, so there's something, I guess. So similar to last week's video, today we'll be looking at quality of life changes, a free update and a DLC for our pterosaurs in Jurassic World Evolution 2. So to start off, I don't think I need to say too much about quality of life changes, as we know they do have much more detail in comparison to the aquatics, as I've already mentioned several times in today's video. However, there are several things I do want to quickly discuss just for this segment of today's video. One of which being the fact that our pterosaurs can't actually walk. Now, I've never actually really understood as to why they don't have walking animations, as I don't see it being that costly in terms to actually implement into the game. It is quite literally a, you could probably get away with using some animations you already have because, they would probably walk in a similar fashion to having 4 legs, because obviously they've got their wings and, basically crawl about. You get what I'm trying to say. And it just makes sense, especially since even in the Dimorphodon species field guide, they mention the fact that they spend more time on the ground as opposed to flying, yet the only time they're on ground is when they're perching or eating, and I'd actually argue they spend more time in the air, at least when they're in my parks. So Frontier, if you want to factually correct yourselves, just add walking animations. It really can't be that hard. And something that's more of a pet peeve from me that I also mentioned in my Feathers DLC video is the fact that Dimorphodons supposedly in their Jurassic World models had feathers on them, whereas in the game they don't for some odd reason. However, I don't think it would be that hard to add to the game now, as of course we have feathers and the animations and, the analysing and researching is already there for them to implement it. I'd also quite like to see just some small paleo accuracy here, but I'd like to see the Tapejara actually being an omnivore. Now, if you didn't know, the Tapejara was actually supposedly omnivorous in real life. So, considering we've already got, ground nuts, stuff like that per se, I don't see it being that hard to make the Tapejara omnivorous, and it would just add another feeder for our pterosaurs, as I don't know, personally I feel the fact that they can only really eat from goat feeders and the fish feeders. I just feel like it would add some more diversity, and it would just be quite cool to have an omnivorous pterosaur in the game. And that does just about wrap it up for quality of life changes, and bringing us over to the free update for our pterosaurs. So the free update would initially include a somewhat similar basis to when we received all the DFW and decorations a few months ago. So obviously this free update wouldn't quite be on that scale, but I feel like it could definitely add some more, for example, decorations and potentially even stuff like animations, as I feel they're definitely a bit lackluster in Jurassic World Evolution 2, especially decorations. I believe we only have 2 perch points and several actual decorations that are really aimed around our pterosaurs. However, if we could get more sort of natural decorations, for example logs and more rocks, stuff like that, I feel like it would definitely be able to make me liven up our aviaries a bit more. I'd also quite like to see more animations for our pterosaurs, as I feel like they're definitely a bit dull in that department, and it could even be stuff like our Dimorphodons swarm together and create an almost flock of themselves just to sort of fly around our parks. It'd look way more menacing than just the one small Dimorphodon coming at you. I'd also quite like to see more attention to the actual battle sequences, as currently I believe they literally just swoop in at each other and then one either dies or one takes damage and then they fly off again. If there was more detail to that, as in if they were more interactive and actually had battle scars, stuff like that, stuff of the sort, it would just be so much cooler, and I'd definitely be building more aviaries in my parks. And that is about it for the free update. I know there wasn't too much there, but generally speaking, Frontier have added pretty much everything that I would have asked for from Pterosaurs, other than stuff like walking, etc, etc, but I get that that could be somewhat harder to implement than aviary perch points. However, that does bring us over to the final part of today's video, the Pterosaur DLC. So this DLC wouldn't quite be on the scale of the aquatic one I mentioned a few days ago, and that is morally because there's not really that much I really want to see in this DLC. Other than new flying reptiles and a new attraction, I don't think there's a lot that they could really add. As I say it, these pterosaurs have already had quite a lot of attention paid to them in previous months and weeks. And also, similarly to the aquatic expansion video, I'm basically just going to list 2 species that I want to see as opposed to a full-blown list, because I do want to leave that up to your imagination. So the 2 species I've gone for today's video are the Archaeopteryx and Hatzegopteryx. The actual DLC itself would definitely include more, but again, this is just for reference. I didn't really want to go into a full-blown list because, you know, imagination is the strongest tool when it comes to thinking. So the Archaeopteryx would actually introduce an almost new genus to our pterosaurs, as they're much smaller than anything we've seen, and so much so the compies of our pterosaurs. It would add potential similarly to what the Quetzalcoatlus has done now. It would add more, you know, opportunities in the future for more pterosaur species, as opposed to just getting more and more average sized pterosaurs, if you will. They're also just bloody adorable in Prehistoric Kingdom, and obviously I don't have access to that game, so, you know, if we did get them in Jurassic World Evolution 2 at some point, it would definitely make me a very happy boy. And I've gone for the Hatzegopteryx, as it was also supposedly bigger than the Quetzalcoatlus, and with the Quetzalcoatlus basically being a colossal kaiju being added to Jurassic World Evolution 2, I don't see why they won't add more of the type. When the Quetzalcoatlus comes out, it will be our one and only large pterosaur, so I definitely have no doubt in my mind that we'll get more in the future, and for me at least, the Hatzegopteryx just fits the billing. It's big, scary, and actually would rival the Quetz, and you know, if we could get these two to fight or at least interact at some point, it would just be so cool. So again, not too much to say in the animal department, but you know, let me know some of your suggestions down in the comments for a potential pterosaur DLC. And lastly, I'd quite like to see the walkway we saw in Jurassic Park 3 actually be re-implemented into Jurassic World Evolution 2. As we know, it was in the aviary that we received in Jurassic World Evolution 1, and for some reason was removed from Jurassic World Evolution 2, or as a matter of fact was never actually in the game. It would be so cool if we could like go in first person mode when we were in it too, and just get an entirely different dynamic and perspective of our pterosaurs. And I know that there's already multiple ways to actually view them in game, but I just feel like adding this walkway would just be so much cooler, as we can get a view from up above of them. But that does just about wrap up my ideas for a potential pterosaur DLC in Jurassic World Evolution 2. If you have enjoyed, please do consider liking and subscribing, as your support does really help the channel out. And if you have made it this far, I'm going to say comment Quetzalcoatlus, as, you know, who doesn't love the Quetz? Thanks for watching, and I do hope to see you in the next one.